And I would like to start off by thanking Emily and International Mediation Awareness Week for allowing me to take up about 35 minutes of your time. You can see that one of the issues that we're going to be discussing today is based around they refused mediation, what now? Now, I can see already in the room, it's making me a little bit nervous that I have some esteemed colleagues in the room who should know this backwards, and I'm not quite sure why they're looking at my face today, but hopefully I can add to your brilliance and your knowledge. You can see on the left of my screen, we have two boxing gloves with a mediator in the middle. I always feel quite small as a mediator because there's always a lot of conflict and passion around the two people that are the parties. On the other side, you can see the "I don't want to talk about it" phrase. And that very often happens right at the beginning of the mediation process. It happens during the mediation process as well, often, but that's already once you're there and the mediator has to deal with that. What we're going to explore today is more around what happens when you're trying to get two people to mediate because one of them has decided that they want to. And the other one hasn't been approached yet or is reluctant. So let's start with me, for those of you who don't know me. Who is Micky Harris? Well, my 58 years on this earth have taken me on many, many journeys. Jobs, relationships in different countries, from military to the media, from catering to running a charity to training and the London taxi trade, just to name a few. And I've managed to see conflict in just about every scenario. I've taken time to listen and learn from many, many clever people. And my knowledge is purely derived from experience and guidance from those who have helped me over the years, because nobody knows it all. And there is always something to be learned if you are prepared to listen. And mediation is all about that. I've not written a book, given a TED talk, or have a huge Twitter following, not yet anyway. I just don't believe that they're right for me. But I did grow up in a country that was constantly governed by the threat of war, internal religious and political chaos, and more societal conflict than most. So am I ready for a fight? Maybe 20 years ago. An argument? I'd rather not. A debate? Oh, bring it on, that I love. Compromise? Yes, when it's necessary. And any alternative to a dispute is worth exploring. And today we're going to discuss that. So why am I supporting IMAL? Well, we'll start with the international. Having lived and worked in several foreign lands, and the world has become a constantly and a smaller place to live in and work in, connectivity is instant, communications flow seamlessly, and we need to be more open to collaboration and social interaction. So the international event is amazing and becoming more commonplace. But mediation is not as joined up globally as we would all like it to be. And we would like this to be the perfect forum for people like us and many more to exchange knowledge, ideas, and information. Mediation, well, the history of mediation, as most of you know, goes back to ancient Greece, where our village elders used to mediate local disputes between villages. So we're just getting to grips with it now in 2020. I believe that mediation is currently one of the fairest and honest ways to resolve issues between parties in the midst of chaos and conflict. Awareness, well, I come from a marketing background, and if you don't raise awareness of your product or service, nobody will identify it with it when they see it. Market position and branding is key. So let's make this the only must-go-to event in the mediation diary globally. Week, well, there's too much to discuss in a day. And after this week of mediation, collaboration, conflict awareness and discussion, I think that by next year we might need 2 weeks. So what are we going to cover? How it should work, the ideals of mediation. I hope that you will agree with me in the way I see it. What might go wrong? When we're talking about what might go wrong, we're going to talk to people in the room, that's you and I welcome some discussion on this and some questions via the chat room. But how do we deal with non-engagement? How do we deal with the reluctance to comply, the avoidance of commitment, and yes, of course, lies, lies, lies. We ask people to be honest and sincere, and we know that for some people that's really difficult. And putting that in a punctuation mark just as we begin the process is very, very important in order to allow us to get both parties to engage. How many mediators are in the room today? I can't see you all now, but wave anyway. Thank you. I can see Marianne and Claire there, so great. Brilliant. So as I said, there's stiff competition in the room today, and a lot of you know a lot more than me. So I'm going to make you giggle now. This is the Harris mediation flow equation. And Chris, don't ask me who the person was who wrote it. We start with friction and spark. We know that friction and spark creates a conflict. We know that conflict left alone and neglected very often creates a dispute that is unwanted or unneeded, but somebody has to do something about it. And a dispute divided by mediation often results in resolution. So in my simple mind, this is the way I see it. The ideal mediation process is that participants come together in agreement, sometimes not, as we're going to explore now. They vent, they talk, they discuss, they rationalize, they hopefully compromise, and they resolve. The mediator listens, asks open questions, uses what I call subliminal inference, which will be a new one for a lot of you, but what it means is getting people to understand how you as the mediator are thinking without you opening your mouth. And we do a whole session on this through the Mediator Network if you want to know more. The mediator then encourages, compliments, questions more, and nurtures resolution. In an ideal world, we'd all be doing that 6 or 7 times a month, and we'd be very happy. So here it is. What might go wrong? Client 1, Mr. Jones, approached a mediator and asked for help. I think we'll all agree with a nod of the head that that's what normally happens, right? Excellent. Client 2, the prospect as we call them, or as I call them, said, no, why the hell should I get involved with this? I'm not the problem here, it's her. Yeah, you sort it out. And this is when we think to ourselves, this is not what I was expecting, okay? When I spoke to client 1, they told me how they were quite happy to go to mediation. It was a good idea. And the other person will probably say, yes. I know sometimes they don't, but let's just say they thought it was all going to go smoothly here. Sound familiar? I know a lot of us have been in that scenario before. So what does the mediator do? We have our own little internal conflict. Do we phone a friend? Do we go 50-50? Do we toss a coin? Do we drop the case? I know that I have been contacted by maybe 5 or 6 people in the last 3 months through the Mediator Network. Young mediators, new mediators, graduate mediators who say, I set myself up, I've got a website, I've got a LinkedIn, I've got everything, I do the networking, and people keep calling me or emailing me with cases that I just can't handle because I don't know how I'm going to get the 2 people in the room, let alone sort this out. Should I just walk away? And I say, no, we never walk away. We are there to help. Do we tell them to go to court? No, that's also not what we do. It's very easy to say, well, I don't think you're going to help yourselves here. Why don't you get a solicitor? Our job as mediators, in my mind, is to try and find a solution. So how do we as mediators take control, advise, consult, and influence? Sometimes it's the approach. Sometimes we need to speak to client A and we need to get the history and the background. We need to ask the open questions, and a lot of them. We need to reinforce that punctuation mark that says, you are telling me everything I need to know here. There are not going to be any ghosts or skeletons coming out of the closet, are there? Is there anything that you'd like to tell me now that you think I should know before I make that communication and that connection with the other party? Maybe the timing's wrong. Maybe you phoned up client 2, the prospect, as I call them, and they've just given you 10 barrels down the phone for phoning them while they're in the middle of dinner or in the middle of a meeting or picking up the kids from school. Maybe the timing is wrong. So again, when speaking to client A, get all the background, find out. They will know the other person because they're in conflict with them. Find out where their push points are. Find out when would be the right time to call them and definitely the wrong time to call them. Make sure that when you make that approach, your timing is right, your conversation is right, your inference is right, and you put the subject on the table in the right way. Maybe the place is wrong. Now I'm going back a bit to good old-fashioned mediation where 2 people turned up at the same place and sat with you in a room. But actually, when I talk about the place in today's world of COVID and people are being online, and we spoke this morning in another session about, you know, people having to sit in their car because they needed a bit of space around them. So you have to take that into account as well. And you have to say to yourself, you know, where is this person speaking to me from? Are they comfortable? Are they confident? Do they feel secure? Because if that place is wrong for them, they will not engage with you in the way, and you'll just get that, no, go talk to somebody else. I don't want to join in. Or maybe, if we're being open about this, we're the wrong person. Maybe we're just the wrong mediator. Maybe we're the wrong personality. Maybe we need to ask those questions when client A comes to us and tells us they would like us to mediate. Am I the right sort of mediator for you? And I can say that confidently because I know I'm very, very lucky, and it's not a plug, but I'm part of the Mediator Network. I've got over 150 mediators sitting on my left shoulder saying, if you can't do it, I will. I'm here to help. We're part of a community. So ask that question. I'm very glad you've come to me. I'm happy to help you. We can help you as an organization. I have all the backup you need, but I need to make sure that I'm going to be the right person. Please, if you have any questions around this, please put them in the chat box. I can't see it at the moment, but please do ask any questions while we're going along. And when we come to the end, we'll be able to discuss. So, moving on, how do we deal with the non-engagement? What does that mean, non-engagement? Well, it means reluctance to comply, right? I don't want to get involved. The avoidance of commitment. You know, I'll give you another example of a past history that I had. We would like to set up a joint Zoom meeting at 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. Oh, I can't do 4 o'clock. Okay, can you give me a couple of times that would be convenient for you? Well, I'm not sure, I'm really busy. Yeah, that is the avoidance of commitment, okay? That is a red flag that says we're not going to get anywhere very quickly with this person. Then you go to the, well, here's 3 days during the week and a weekend. Could you please give me some time slots that you can help? Well, I just don't know. Right, and we have it, you know it, okay? I'm not teaching you stuff that you don't know, but think beyond that and think behind that and think why. Are they uncomfortable? Do they need some reassurance? Do they need nurturing to the table here? Remember, it's the other person that's asked for the mediation, not them. And even though they might feel aggrieved, okay, they're still not willing to say, yeah, I'm just going to come and do this, because in the back of their mind, they're thinking, hold on, why didn't I ask for mediation? Why wasn't I the first person to the table here? Yeah, why wasn't I proactive? I want to get what I want, so why didn't I think of that? So they're going to be even more annoyed with the other person because they got there first, okay? So unfortunately, there's this whole issue around the flux of the friction and the conflict, okay? And it's now getting even hotter and hotter. And your job is to put a bit of cold water over it and say, just calm down, it's all going to be all right. My job as a mediator is to sit in the middle in total transparency, in total confidence, and to help you out. It doesn't matter who was the first person to make the call. The point is that somebody has, and we're now engaging in this conversation. And I don't want to be the one to tell you that people lie, but I'm going to tell you that people lie. Okay, take it on board. They will not tell you in the first instance everything you need to know. They will tell you what it is that they want you to know in order for them to have the upper hand. So you have to dig deep. So, we're not going to throw in the towel. We are going to explain the consequences of non-engagement, the time, the stress, and the costs. We also know that in a lot of instances, if you are approaching somebody to go into for instance, civil and commercial, or workplace, and somebody doesn't comply and they don't want to come to the table, it may be a bad mark against them should anything go to court. Okay, and you want to imply this without stating the obvious. You need to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable about the fact that there's an opportunity for them here to help themselves. If you're still not going to get anywhere with the other party, maybe just take a break. Go back to the initial inquiry and say, look, at this stage, in this environment, with this amount of heat around the conflict, perhaps this is not the best place. Okay, perhaps this is not the best time. Perhaps we can help you, because as mediators, we're also conflict coaches. And most of the people that I've met in my last 6, 7, 9 months in mediation and how many years in conflict management, we also have that little bit of counseling, you know, wanting to help people, wanting to nurture people, wanting to help them find the resolve. So we don't say, no, sorry, we can't help you. We say, look, hold on a minute. Why don't we work with you? Why don't we talk you through what's going on? And hey, you can charge for that, all right? You don't have to do it for nothing. You're not a charity. But work with that person, because sometimes, and I have actually found in a few cases, more than a few, that if you approach that person in the right way, sometimes by making them change their approach to the other party, all of a sudden things loosen up a bit. Okay, I had a dispute going on in the village that I live in where there were 2 people. It was all over a joint parking lot in the front of 2 houses, and they weren't clients because we didn't need to get there, but person A and person B just were at each other's throats all the time. And person A was this lovely lady, and every time she got out of her car and person B happened to be in the garden with his kids in the summer, he would say something to person A and she would go nuts, and expletives and swearing and kicking and screaming. And she came to me and she said, this guy is a tyrant. Every time I get out of my car, he says something to wind me up. And I said, well, what do you do? She goes, I go mad and I scream and I shout. And I said, whoa, hold on a minute. Yeah, maybe there's something you can do in order to change the way he looks at you when you get out of the car. Okay, so one-sided mediation is more like counseling, but don't lose a client, because if you manage to get them to change their approach and their attitude to the case, to the matter, then sometimes you can revisit it, okay, in a week, a month, 2 months, and that will become an opportunity to create mediation. So, conflict coaching. I don't know how many of you have tried this, but sometimes you can actually get both parties to engage with you separately in conflict coaching without starting the mediation, okay? Because they both want to resolve, but they don't want to meet. They don't want to sit in the same Zoom room together. So again, you can do that on an individual basis, working for both of them for their joint resolution. And then suggestions in how you get past this. And ultimately, yes, it's going to be, you do realize that if you can't get past this together, you are not going to be able to resolve this at all, okay? And sometimes, as I said before, working on the one party and changing the scenario or the communication between them is going to help. And as long as we're transparent and inclusive of all parties, we should be able to offer the alternatives and move forward. As long as we explain to them that the conversation will be the same with both parties, even though they have not yet engaged, we should be able to do 2 things. 1, charge them for our time. And 2, it's like a pre-mediation, bringing them closer to the point where they can actually engage in mediation. I hope that's all made sense to you so far. Claimants should also be aware of all the ADR opportunities before you set out in mediation. And they should also consider who is involved and who will need to be involved if they cannot reach an agreement. And when I say who is involved, that means you as the mediator and both of the parties, not just themselves. And sometimes somebody has got to make the first offer. Very often the person who asks for mediation considers that they are already ahead of the game. because they're leading this. But actually, it's about both of the parties. And very often when I engage with the first party, I have exactly the same conversation with the second party, that somebody always has to make the first move in compromise. And of course, the court's view on non-compliance, parties refusing to participate, sometimes they will be liable for fines in the court if it goes that far. So let's not forget to mention that when we can. I know that the CJC report in 2018 is very complex and there are a lot of long words in there, but it makes for very good reading. And there's a lot of things that aren't quite right for everybody yet in mediation, but there's a lot to be learned. So moving on, I'm just checking the time. Options for taking control and owning the pace. I always say, listen 3 times and solve once. If you're not sure what somebody said, ask them to repeat it. And if you're still not convinced you know what they're talking about, ask them to repeat it using slightly different language. Because language is so important in mediation, as we all know. Be the peacemaker, not the pacemaker. Do not rush it. If you need to call it quits because everybody's exhausted, do that. If you're speaking to party B because you have been asked to approach them and it's the wrong timing, as I said, do not rush it. And think about the words that you use and your body language especially, and especially when you're on a Zoom call. I often say to people, if I need to talk to them on the phone, would you mind if we just hop onto a Zoom call or an online chat? Because I believe that if you're sitting face to face with somebody, even if you're just shoulders, neck and head, yeah, you have the opportunity to engage with them in a much more personal basis and create rapport. Because once you have rapport, you will gain trust. And once you have trust, you will have compliance. And once you have compliance, you'll find it so much easier to do your job. And then there's a little bit of selling. Yes, there's a little bit of selling. There's a lot of persuading, a lot of empathizing, not sympathizing. There's a lot of influencing, as I call it, nudging, okay? And without opening our mouths and without saying the wrong things, we need to get both parties facing in the right direction before you can start. The conduct of both parties during and after the proceedings is very, very important. And again, is something that should be spelled out right from the start. And as I said before, that subliminal inference, practice it. You know how to read people, make sure they know how to read you so that you can encourage them without opening your mouth. You can query without opening your mouth, and you can let them understand that they're in the right place. So hopefully you've absorbed all of that and it's been of help. What have we learned today? It's not as easy as it sounds. I know I can tell you it is, but it's not, and you need to practice. It takes 3 to tango, but 2 to waltz. If there's not going to be 3 of you in the room, you can deal with 2. We never want to lose a client. When somebody turns to us, they need help. They're in trauma, they're in conflict. They don't want people to say mediators are no good unless there's 2 people ready to go. We exhaust every opportunity and option. And if we need help, remember to ask for help from other mediators in your circle. And sometimes we work with the clients and sometimes on their behalf. We are problem solvers, not problem makers. The language that we use and the ears that we use to understand and listen and really get what is going on in the room will make us the problem solver. And sometimes we do have to sell our services. Even when we think it's running away from us, we have to make sure that we keep people engaged and we show them how we can help them.